felt like it was where I should be. And that feeling is quite unique in someone's life. You know, you're in a place where you really instinctively, in your body, throughout your bones, feel that this is where you need to be at that moment in your life. Felt a bit nervous. I remember getting off the plane, wanting to be on the plane, back on the plane, because it was a sense of comfort. But after about 6-7 hours, it just became euphoria, and that lasted so long.
Ever since that euphoric experience, backpacker Tommy Walker hasn't lived in his homeland of England. He is now in his 14th year of living and traveling abroad, and still loving it. If you follow the news in Southeast Asia, you have most likely come across foreign correspondent Tommy Walker. He is an international journalist who reports on politics, elections, wars, and more. His award-winning work has led him to appear on television and write for major news outlets all around the world. Based in Bangkok, he also serves as the vice president of the Foreign Correspondents Club of Thailand, and even hosts the Dateline Bangkok podcast. But beyond his work as a journalist, we're interested in what shaped Tommy into the person he is today. Why have traveling and living abroad brought him so much happiness? And what or who inspired him to choose the life he leads now? Welcome to episode 17 of the X Perspective podcast. I'm your host, Raj. I'm very excited about today's episode because we're diving into some fascinating topics centered around travel and life abroad. Tommy shares why he thinks travel has changed over the years and why he now feels like an outsider in his own hometown. He also reveals his biggest takeaway from nearly 14 years of traveling and living overseas. Although he's content with the life he has chosen, he still feels there's a missing link in his journey. Come with me as we flip the script on this 38-year-old British journalist and ask him the tough questions to uncover what drives his adventurous spirit. Tommy, what was it like growing up in Stockton-on-Tees, a town in northeast England?
Humble, I think is the word. I mean, you know, typical kid, playing football in the street, going to the park, playing computer, video games. I was lucky. I lived on a street where there was a lot of people the same age as me, kids, and our parents were all friends. And every few weeks, our parents would throw parties, and we'd all get together. And you know, that was quite frequent. So that was quite a nice upbringing. And the school was at the primary school, or junior high school was at the one end of the street. Then I went into secondary school, high school, and that was only 20 minutes walk away. So yeah, things were very close and very together and community-based. You know, that was sort of my upbringing in a town which has a bit of history, but unfortunately today has many issues, you know, like in terms of lack of jobs and poverty and crime. So it wasn't like an easy sort of like place to live in that aspect of it. But in terms of sort of my upbringing with my parents and my brother and other friends and family, it was nice to have that community as a base, basically.
Did you ever imagine a life outside of this small town?
Yes, I did. Absolutely. Actually, I always talk about this. When I was around about 7 years old, I always felt that I would be a foreign correspondent in Africa or the Middle East. I always had that sort of some form of vision in my head. Not that I could understand it at that point, but I always just thought that. I think that actually started, I actually watched remember following the Bosnia War on the BBC, and that kind of was just imprinted in my head, and that sort of became a dream, if you like. I mean, maybe dream's a bit strong, but certainly something that that I wanted or thought I would do. And it's funny you mentioned that. It brings back a memory. I remember being in primary school. I was 11 years old, 1 year before, or maybe 10 years old, a couple of years before I went to high school. And we were at assembly. And in those days, assembly, the younger kids would all sit on the floor, and then the back bench was for like the 11-year-olds who were just about to go to high school. And I remember like looking back at these 11-year-olds thinking, I won't know these people when I'm older. And I won't know who they are. I'm not going to keep in contact with them. Not that I would anyway, but I just remember looking back thinking I won't know them. Because I always felt that I would be somewhere else.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that was about 10 as well, like 10 years old. So yeah, there's always been little things in my brain that I've always felt that I was sort of someone who was meant or would excel maybe outside of this small town and sort of way of living. So it's been deep there for a while.
I know you eventually left your town, but let's talk about the events or factors that were leading up to this decision when you finally did leave your town and England on your 25th birthday.
There's many factors. I mean, I actually wanted to go backpacking. My big inspiration for this was my late uncle. He passed away a few years ago. He went backpacking Southeast Asia in the 90s.
Wow.
And he lived in Hong Kong. And he would come back mid-90s and, he would talk about all of these far-flung lands, these, beaches and the way of life and chaotic cities. And, he would talk about that. And that really inspired me from a young age. So I'd always wanted to sort of go traveling. At a certain point, when I was about 22, I wanted to go backpacking. But I didn't have too much money at that time, and I thought, okay, well, if I wanted to try it out and do something like that, I will go to Europe. So I actually booked a flight to Sweden, and I didn't have any sort of itinerary in mind. It was very sort of like, okay, I'll just book a flight, and then I'll just go there, and I'll make my way somewhere else, And it was very loose. At the time, my father was very unwell, and part of the reason why I didn't take that trip is because my father passed away at that age when I was 22. Now, he had been devoted for the last 10 years of his life into Buddhism. And he did that for his own reasons. So that sort of cultural difference in a household in the UK where Buddhism isn't sort of, it's not a typical religion or ideology to follow, it's sort of, it's more seen as more exotic. Being part of my father's life when we were living together with my mum and my brother, and having books all over the house, it's a different cultural sort of, it's an alternative, view of a different side of religion, and just the house felt a little bit more cultural. We had like Buddhist relics and things like that. It just felt a little bit more open-minded to have that. So, anyway, so yeah, he in his later life, he was sort of devoted to that, but he passed away.
Tommy, it sounds like before the age of 22, you were exposed to a lot of different things, meaning like different ways of thinking.
Sure.
Maybe more than the people that were around you?
Absolutely. My friends on my street, they were, typical Brits, like, they didn't have that exposure. And I can talk about other family members as well. My grandparents used to live in America. I've got family in America now. I've got family in New Zealand. I've got family who have traveled. My auntie and uncle are language teachers and travel all around Europe and live in Europe. And so there's been these inspirations from a young age, so all of these have contributed and compiled to like a different way of thinking, as you put it, and maybe another way of living. Anyway, so my father passed away, and so obviously that sort of halted things a little bit. And then I remember I was working in a job, and it was like a sales job, and it was a good job. I was getting paid well. Long story short, they had a big company restructure, and they were like, oh, you're making too much money. You can stay with us, and we'll cut your wage by like 50%, or we'll give you 3 months redundancy. So I was just like, see you later, guys. I'm going.
This is my ticket out.
Yeah, a bit of that. Yeah, for sure. And so I had a good job. That redundancy. My father also left some money for inheritance, got some money from him after his unfortunate passing. So that was the window really for me to sort of finally fulfill this sort of reason to go. And my plans were short. I mean, they were only for 3 months to go backpacking.
Tommy, before we jump into your backpacking trip, which changed your life, you told me earlier,
Sure.
Did your dad also travel?
So it's funny you mentioned that, he wanted to travel Europe at the same time as me. And I remember we had a joke before he passed, and he said, what if we backpack together? And he would be telling me like, I'd have to be in at a certain time and things like that. And I was like, I was 21, 22 at that time. We weren't living together at that point, but, so he wanted to, but unfortunately when he got the chance to, by that time my mum and dad had separated, but at that time when he became single, unfortunately his health problems got in the way. So he didn't have the chance to, but he wanted to. And I think that's part of, an inspiration of mine as well, to be able to go and do that,
Yeah, I was going to say if that was connected in any way,
yeah,
the fact that maybe your dad was also desiring to travel and you felt that I should do this also for my dad.
Absolutely. Yeah, a little bit like that. I mean, obviously it was my desire as well, but certainly had that sort of, that motivation from his desires. And look, it's 2025 now, and it seems, certainly if you go on social media, that everyone seems to travel. But in 2011, 2012, it was a unique thing still, and people have traveled for obviously all the time. Backpacking has been going on for decades, but the pre-social media incessant era, as I call it, pre-2014, people traveling was seen as a little bit unique. People were saying to me, like, why do you want to go travel? Like, it's a bit, like they didn't understand the concept of it, Nowadays, if you were to ask someone like that, people would be like, oh yeah, traveling looks amazing, because it's become more mainstream and social media has exasperated that. But in 2011, 2012, it was like, I still believe it's the last few years before travel became digital and mainstream. So at that point, it was a unique thing to do.
Travel was fairly a unique thing, even though backpacking has been done for decades. I remember Jason and we did a trip around the world in 2008, and family members were just so surprised.
Yeah.
Like, what is this? Like, why are you guys traveling around the world for a year? Like, who does that?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had different reactions when I decided to come to Asia in 2012, because I had some family members say, well, get it out your system, get out your system. And I remember saying, I don't know if it's a system, it's a short-term thing. I remember thinking that at the time, of certainly responding like that. And then other people were just sort of like, why are you doing that? And although I have true friends and some, when you're in a small town, people tend to know everyone. And, people who I would probably more call acquaintances than friends, people that you would probably see in the bars and go out. A lot of, I wouldn't say a lot of people, but a few people, a minority, sort of got a little bit jealous of me traveling. And I actually didn't make a big thing of it. There was no leaving party. It was just like, yeah, see you later. And I kind of wanted to do that. I didn't want to, no one else has to know my business, my particular wants. So that created, like I said, with minority of groups, a little bit of jealousy and resentment, certainly from what I'd read and been told. And again, I think when you travel at that time, people felt like it was, you're like leaving the group and abandoning their sort of way of life. It's almost like an insult to someone, because if they don't understand it, they take it as an offense. They take it as like, who the hell does this guy think he is? So there's a little bit of that, and that's common. I've spoken to other people about that before. But in reality, it was a very small minute of people thinking like that. Some people were confused. Some people were like interested. My late uncle, we had dinner on my the day before my birthday. We had dinner at a restaurant, and he said to me later, like, I know this trip's going to change your life. He didn't say it to me at the time. He gave me some advice, but he said, I remember sitting across from you and saying this is going to change your life. That sort of mindset. So, and he didn't tell me that till later, and he's passed away now. People give you they react to it differently.
For sure. And let's jump into how that 3-month trip, you went to Southeast Asia for 3 months. How did that change your perspective on life?
Well, the trip itself, I still talk about it to people I met on that trip, and I still keep in contact with people on that trip, actually. I mean, the plan was 3 months, and I'd planned to do a little bit of volunteering, teaching English, have some sort of structure. But when I came out, I just felt like it was where I should be. And that feeling is quite unique in someone's life. You're in a place where you really instinctively, in your body, throughout your bones, feel that this is where you need to be at that moment in your life. And I just remember feeling so nervous, obviously, The plane journey, it was the longest. I'd been to America before, but it was one of the longest journeys. London to Thailand, Bangkok, 12 hours, on my own. Felt a bit nervous. I remember getting off the plane, wanting to be on the plane, back on the plane, because it was a sense of comfort. But after about 6-7 hours, it just became euphoria, and that lasted so long.
Was there a moment during that trip where you felt this is really right? Like something happened, an incident, and you're just like, this is where I'm supposed to be?
I don't know if there's a particular moment. I do remember, it's funny, I remember being down Khao San Road, I think the first couple of nights, and I just remember thinking...
And for the audience, Khao San Road is a fairly tourist place here in Bangkok.
Yeah, it's more tourist and mainstream now. Khao San Road's a street, it's an old street, which used to, and still does, attract a lot of backpackers and travelers, and it has lots of stalls and bars and things like that. It's very colorful and crazy.
So you were there?
Yeah, it's been around for decades. I went there, I stayed a couple of streets away, and I just remember a couple of nights into the trip thinking, there's so much life here. And I just remember feeling this is where I should be. It was like controlled chaos. The weather was nice, people around me. And again, I think the biggest point when I look back is that I was around like-minded people. Like everyone was traveling, and I really adored and respected every single person I met. Weird, wonderful, wherever they're from. And I think that was an eye-opener, because it was like, you guys are here for a reason. You've done something cool or different in your life to be here. And I really respected that, to be different and to be unique and to go against conformity of society. And again, it goes back to the point, because traveling then 10, 12, 14 years ago, it was seen differently. The perception of travel is not what it is today. And so anyone at that time I was meeting, I was really in awe of. Certainly I remember meeting people who had traveled for a year, and I was like, this guy's like a legend. Like, I really respected anyone at that point, those early months. Why
was it for you that when you saw people who were not conforming, like so inspiring? Like, where did that come from?
Because they're individuals, they're independent, they think for themselves, they're not going with the trend, with the fashion. And I really still, to this day, really love meeting anyone who's doing something different and have an open mind about things and have done things against what 99% of the people in the world do. And I really admire that, because you're going against so much emotion and what society might instruct you or direct you to. And you're doing your own thing. And I think it's such a great way to live, and it's because it sort of channels into what I do as well. I really feel that I'm like that and have been like that for so long, and so I just really admire anyone to do that, because emotionally, physically, it's difficult to create a life, even if it's just an experience of backpacking, but just to do that and get out your comfort zone. We hear that so many times, but it takes a lot. It used to take a lot to do that. Certainly, when I started.
Well, it is still a challenge. We moved to Bangkok, and it's not easy to leave your life. Like, we left our life in Canada and to start and to figure out how to live here and navigate and how to stay in Thailand. It's challenging, and it takes courage, and it takes energy to go against the grain, right?
Absolutely. I think intelligence as well. We haven't mentioned that. I think you have to be really intelligent, certainly, or open-minded to be able to do that. And it's a different way of living. People are out the comfort zone. People, have their home comforts, and they don't want to change that. So when you do something like backpacking in them days, or you go and live abroad or overseas, building a new life, I think it's one of the hardest things you can do, but it's one of the most fulfilling things you can do as well. And I think that goes back to when I went traveling, is that there was some nerves, but the euphoria afterwards was just so worth it. And I have big online communities that I speak to people now, young backpackers, and some people always say they're nervous. And I just say, look, you have to have the nerves. Don't try and get rid of the nerves, because the nerves are important when you do something like this in your life. You're going against what you've been taught, what most people in your life are doing. So don't try and get rid of the nerves, embrace them. You have to be nervous. If you're nervous about something, it's probably worth doing.
And also, you're like growing.
Absolutely, yeah.
You're going to be nervous because you're expanding.
Yes.
You're getting out of your comfort zone.
Exactly.
It only makes sense.
Exactly. Absolutely. The feeling of being nervous is just, I believe, your body telling you that this is something you're not familiar with and you don't know. But if you're pushing yourself to do that still, then what does that tell you? That your body still knows that, or your brain knows that this is something that's going to be worth it. And I think anyone who wants to travel or hasn't done it, whatever age, doesn't matter what age you are, if you're nervous, that's cool. That's the initial steps. But afterwards, most people, it becomes amazing after that. And that's what makes it worth it.
So, Tommy, over the years, you touched on it a bit, but let's get a little bit deeper. How has traveling and working abroad influenced your mindset and your expectations for how you live your life?
Well, influenced my mindset. I think, without talking too generic, I mean, it makes you become more open-minded into different ideas, into different cultures, into different ways of people doing things. I've visited so many countries, lived in so many different countries. I think you're constantly learning. And the biggest takeaway, I would say, for someone who's been overseas for so long and lived in different countries is that there aren't many sort of conventional issues that I'm concerned with anymore. Like if people are freaking out about a late taxi or honestly, these minute things that in a different setting can freak people out. I remember being in Portugal years ago, family vacation, and people were worried about the airport van wasn't on time. Mm-hmm. And it was like 4 hours before the flight, and it's only a 2-hour flight to England or 3 hour. And I was like, and it sounds silly, but it's just like, I was just like, relax. Like, you don't have to absolutely, and that's the lower end of the scale of things. But I think the biggest takeaway, the biggest benefit is to great things, met amazing people, open-minded people, lived in gorgeous places, and all of that comes with that. Whether it's the weather, the culture, the food, the parties, the social life, the different way of living, and just add into that sponge of curiosity that I have. I really like to see new things, new energies, and it's just really fulfilling for me. But having all of that, it just makes you feel a little bit more at ease with things, and I think that's good for anyone, whatever life you live, just to be a little bit more experienced in how to deal with things, how to react to things. And it benefits you as well, whether it's in a workplace, whether it's in a social environment, whether you're dating, not to get freaked out, not to get too worried, not to, think this way, think these ways.
That trip I talked about earlier, that 1-year trip, to this day, the lessons I learned from traveling during that time period, I apply them to my life today. And they just keep coming up over and over again. And I'm so thankful, so grateful that we did that trip because it changes your life, it changes how you think. And then you can use all of those lessons and apply them to different parts of your life, like you just said, right?
Yeah, it's an amazing thing.
I want to go back to family and friends.
Sure.
So you have experienced so much. And just for the listeners, Tommy has lived in 6 different countries, and he's traveled to over 70 countries already. So he's very well experienced in travel and living abroad. So Tommy, let's talk about when you do go back and visit family in England. Can you just explain to us, how have the relationships and family dynamics with your friends changed?
I go back for sentimental reasons in terms of to see people. The actual location, it doesn't, as much as I appreciate and care for my upbringing and where I'm from, that doesn't really interest me anymore to go back. It's a small town, everyone's grown up, everyone's doing their own thing. It's a different life for me now. So going back to the actual location, it's something that, yeah, it's nice, but it's not something I would do. If none of my family were there, I wouldn't go back.
Do you still consider England your home, though?
I guess I have to because I'm from there, but I don't, I left on my 25th birthday, like you said. I'm in my late 30s now. For the vast majority of my adult life, I've been outside of the UK. And it's something I think about quite a bit because it shapes who you are as an adult. Sure, up until you're 18, you're a child, right? Really, and that shapes that life. But when I think of my life, then I think I'm a different person. I really think it's a different. I've had we talk about cats and 9 lives. When I think of my life back in Stockton-on-Tees, you're bringing up some thoughts in my head. I don't see it as part of my life, as this life. Sorry,
this chapter of your life.
Yeah, but I just think when I just think of it more as a dream, like as a dream of someone else's life. It's strange to think like that because it's so different to who I am now and where I've been and what I do. And so when I go back, I love to, sentimental reasons to see family and friends. Yeah, I don't think they see who I am, and because I go back and I try to cater to them, and of course they'll see some change in me, getting older and talking about stories, but
do they really understand you, like your journey, your adventures, what makes you so happy and wanting to stay abroad? Do they understand you?
I think they know the very surface level, and it's a frustrating thing. It's a frustrating thing, I have to admit, and I've talked about it to them and to other people. I mean, when you meet other solo travelers or people who have had similar journeys, this conversation can come up. People don't understand the new you, if you like, and it sounds a bit cliche, but it's not, because people do change, and that goes with age, but also with travel and experience and otherworldly, environments. But I feel a bit frustrated because they don't see who I am today and haven't. They see a guy who's visiting, who's trying to conform at that time just to see everyone and go back. So, yeah, it's a little frustrating, but I think it's common from what I've talked to other people about and read and things. So, there is this sort of conversation that goes on amongst travelers, and it turns into a bit of criticism because it's like people don't understand who I am, and I get that, but they haven't done it. They can't relate. So it's the way it is. Everyone has their own path. I have my own path. I don't worry about it.
So it seems to me, based on what you said, your family and friends still have certain expectations of how they see you or what they expect from you?
Completely not the same, but not fully the same, sorry. But, obviously it's just how to deal with you, how they interact, what birthday presents they still get me, which I would have got when I was 18, the same sort of things, which is, of course, completely and massively grateful that people still buy your birthday presents when you're in your late 30s, but it's just what they know of you. They channel into that, and obviously what they know of me is TommyWalker 1 to 25 years old. They don't know TommyWalker 25-year-old plus.
What would you want to say to your family and friends so that they could actually understand that you have become a different person?
I think the only way to talk to them about that was that they'd have to come and visit me wherever I am.
Have they ever?
I've had friends. I've had my brother visit, but family, no, because of their age and other reasons they tell me. But again, it is what it is. I took this journey myself. I never expected anyone to come follow me, but obviously as you get a bit older, you start to think, okay, well, it would be nice, but everyone has their own reasons, whether you believe them or not.
Tommy, what about yourself? How have your expectations about yourself changed ever since you left England 13 years ago? And what I mean by that is, what kind of expectations did you have before you left England about how life would be like, and how have those changed in terms of your character?
I've always been a little bit of an ambitious person and a little bit of an open-minded person, a bit of a dreamer. So I didn't put any limits. I don't like to put any limits to anything. I think anyone can be anyone, So in terms of expectations, I always expected to travel and to live overseas. I always expected to be doing something different than the system jobs. And when I say the system jobs, like working in an office or hospitality, all these jobs I've done. So I've worked, as a travel writer, as an independent, I'm working in the media now, on TV, podcasts, all of this stuff. They're all a bit creative. It's in that sort of, industry. And I have always expected to do something like that. That was my expectation. I couldn't be doing what I'm doing now if I was still in the UK.
Why is that?
From where I'm from, the limitations of what would, I can't be a foreign correspondent in the northeast of England, it just doesn't fit. For me, there's always been that lure of adventure. And that's one of the reasons why I like to be in the media, because I like to do it overseas. I like to see how different cultures work and explore that. And that's part of what I like to do. And
did you ever, during your journey since you've left England, ever feel guilty about not returning back?
Sure. I think, yeah, absolutely. I'd imagine it goes through one's mind. Certainly if you've left for a certain amount of time, it has with me a little bit, naturally, certainly in the early years. Because, you've been part of these people's lives for so long. So there's no natural guilt. But as time goes on, I just believe that everyone has their own path. There's always a reason, whether people accept it or not. And I think it comes to a point, certainly if you're an independent person or you work for yourself, that you've just got to stop listening to other people, because I think at the end of the day, to an extent, of course, it's always good to get advice and, reassurance. But what I've found in life is that people will request things of you that suits them. And I think it happens a lot in life. People don't like to admit it or look at it in that way. They see it in different ways as sort of support and comfort. But in reality, we like to care for people, but we are all selfish in some ways. And I think people will request things of you to benefit them. So, I've had, it sounds so rosy when people text me. They don't do it so much now because I've been away so long, but, come back. And it's just like, okay, what's this? Is this like, am I going to go back and it's just going to be this new energy and I'm going to feel really like alive and like people really want to see me? But when you go back, it's just like, oh, hey, and it sounds so sort of encouraging, but then you think, okay, yeah, of course they want to see me, but it's also to suit them, And it sounds a bit cynical to say it like that, because I respect and I appreciate people who, have asked me to visit.
Is there something that you expect your family members and friends to be like?
More curiosity from close people and family and friends would definitely, certainly from someone who's traveled, whether it's myself or I think would be more appreciated. But again, you understand that everyone has their own ways of doing things.
For sure. Like we would go on a trip, let's say like to Mongolia, come back, be super excited. Like, you know what? We did camping in Mongolia for 4 days. And you just kind of get this blank stare from family members and friends and be like, okay, well, moving on. Like they don't get it.
And that's frustrating. That goes back to what I was saying, because it's such an achievement for you to do that.
For sure.
Right? And it's so out of your comfort zone, and it's so different to the typical holidays that all your friends or some of your friends and family might take, and the ease of that. Like for example, most Brits go to an island or a beach in Spain or something, and they just sit there and sunbathe for a week. It's nice, not knocking it. But it's easy. It doesn't put you out your comfort zone too much, So if you do something like that in Mongolia or wherever it is, it's such an achievement. And for people to bypass it like that, it's so annoying. I think it's so annoying. I really do. And honestly, it frustrates the hell out of me, because it sounds a bit cynical, but that experience you did is better than any experience they might have done in their whole life. But they've bypassed it almost to be like, oh, whatever. I had a similar thing. I was in the Philippines. I rode on the top of a jeepney in Banawe, in the north of the Philippines, for like 3 hours. And it was incredibly, I was the only foreigner there. And it was just unique and it was cool. And, people might think not much of it now, but at the time I was like, oh, it's so awesome. And I remember Skyping. Yeah, Skype's gone now, but I remember Skyping with my family. I don't know why at that time, but I did. And then I remember that, talking about what I just did. And it was that sort of smirk and shrugged off look.
Yeah.
And I was just like, who the hell is that? Like, it's not like, who the hell do you think you are doing that? Really frustrates me, because it's just like, I'm just told you an interesting thing that you're not going to hear anywhere else.
Yeah, and you just want them to understand it,
just
how important it is to you.
Yeah. I guess that's the sort of diplomatic way to say it, for sure.
Tommy, when you left England back in 2012, did you ever consider returning to live back there someday?
I mean, the only time I've ever considered it, I haven't considered it in recent years, but maybe the first 5, 6, after the 5th year, 6th year, maybe that you start to think, will I ever go back? Because I think when you go traveling, certainly how I did it, you went backpacking, you're initially going for the experience, right? It's an experience, but that experience and then essentially takes you home. It's temporary. So for me, in my mind, it's like, okay, I went for the experience. My plan hadn't been to go and like emigrate and live. That came with it. right? And that came because of how much I loved it and the opportunity that I saw. So certainly it was on my mind the first few years, but I always felt, and I had a couple of job offers and things here and there, but I always felt that it wasn't worth what potential I have and what I can do. And, you know, it might look good on paper and it might appease everyone who might want me back there, but is it going to make me happy? And is it something that is going to limit my potential? Because also I had a good conversation with a friend who lives in England. He's from Germany. And he said, if you come back, that'll be it. You won't go back out. And also I'm a bit fearful of that as well, you know, because it's been 13 years into the 14th now since I've been away. And if you go back, it doesn't happen to everyone, of course, but my concern is that if I went back, would I get too settled?
Would you even be able to go back at this point?
That's a different, because this is, you know, we're in the 14th year since it's happened now, since I left. No, I don't think so. It's very difficult. I feel like I'm British, but I feel different. I feel like someone who isn't suited for where I'm from. I feel like an outsider, essentially. When I go back, I get a little bit nervous when I go back because it's like, how do I deal with things? How can I have the patience for things that I don't have to deal with anymore? So, no, I mean, the first few years, you think about going back, maybe this job, that job, but in reality, after this time, it's been so long, I don't plan to.
I think that's very interesting, that perspective that you just mentioned. How do you deal with going back? Like, will you have the patience to deal with the things that are back in England?
Yeah. And also I'm very aware of things. All my friends, they're in relationships and have families and things like that. The life is very different. If the energy I seek still, maybe I've always had it, is that I still seek adventure and new gatherings and socializing and sort of, you know, controlled chaos and new experiences. I still seek that more than probably ever, but just in a different way. I know going back, that's not going to fulfill me. That energy is not going to be there. Sure, for the odd Saturday night a month, but that's not enough for me. Also, as well, I think this plays a big part is relationships, and I've been in long-term relationships, and I've been single, and I'm a happy single. I love being single because I love to focus on what I want to do, and it's a form of selfishness there, but I don't care because it's a very liberating way to live. And being single in a big city, I've lived in Hong Kong, I've lived in Melbourne, I've lived now in Bangkok, you know, around the world. Being single in a big city in your late 30s is not the same than living in a small town in your late 30s, you know, because, you know, if I went back and if I was to try to adapt to what my friends were doing and live that life, I would probably just try and find a girlfriend because that's what everyone does, right? You know, double dating and things like that. But would that be harder? Because I'm in my late 30s, honestly. In a small town, it's very hard to do that. In a big city, plenty of single people, you know, and the age difference, whether it's older or young, it's not much of a big thing. But in a small town, it can be seen a little bit differently. So I think being comfortable as a single guy, independent guy is really important to me. I love it. And I think I'd just get a little bit bored if I went back, essentially, and it wouldn't fit who I am today. If I had a long-term partner and that's where I wanted to be and I wanted to calm down and I was comfortable with what I was doing, content. I mean, I'm content anyway, massively content. I've been content for years, which is great, but because I still have some ambition, lots of ambition. But if I was content to this is my life, marriage, settle down, church on a Sunday, that sort of thing, you know what I mean? Like doing the school run during the week, that sort of lifestyle, then sure, that life is perfect without trying to criticize anyone's ambition who lives back in my hometown or whatever like that, because everyone does. But it doesn't match, where I am now. And that's one of the big reasons why I wouldn't go back, because it just wouldn't fit. There's a quote out there, which I wrongfully recite it, but it basically says something along the lines of, once your brain has an initial sort of dimensions, and once you leave your hometown, those dimensions don't fit back into that an initial structure. It's a very terrible way of reciting it. It's a great quote. I'll find it somewhere, but it basically means once you've left that initial way of living, it's very difficult
to go back.
Yeah, because you've expanded so much, and people might listen, might think, well, what does that mean? But it's so difficult emotionally, mentally, to go back into that box.
Exactly. We went back, Jason and I went back to Canada. We went from the East Coast. We even lived in the Arctic in northern Canada. Then we even went to Vancouver. And ultimately, we had to leave Canada.
And I think sometimes that we have to be aware that can happen anywhere. We're in Bangkok now, we can live here, and that eventually might be the feeling. But it's having the desire, the know-how, the intelligence, the open-mindedness to be able to be like, okay, I've got what I want from this place, I can move on. And it's a great way of living. I really do believe it's such a liberating way to see the world and to experience new things. And all it does is just make you smarter, it makes you happier, it makes you more content. And it just gives you a little bit more excitement in your life. And those are the basics, really, of people who might never have done this. It just creates new energies for you. And if that's something that you seek, traveling, living overseas is something you need to do.
And also it shows you different parts of you.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. You can, and it sounds like a cliche. I remember when I first went backpacking, and it was like, I can finally be myself. And it is a cliche, and people talk about it for years, but it's reality. You're meeting people on a blank slate. You can act and be who you truly, instinctively, inside you believe you are. And then sometimes, depending on how you've been raised or brought up, if you're in a small town like where I'm from, you have to conform to be part of certain friendship groups or to be seen as a cool guy to single women. You kind of have to live up to a certain standard. Yeah. And where I'm from, being the tough guy is the one who gets the attention. It's the tough guy image. But when I left, it was like, thank God I don't have to be part of that. I can be the smart guy, the open-minded guy, the successful guy, the whatever.
You could be you.
Exactly.
I grew up in Toronto, a huge city, a big city in Canada, and I felt the same way you did. When you go out and you start traveling and you go to different places, I remember thinking, whoa, this is you? Like I started acting and behaving in a way that I didn't even think existed within me.
Yeah.
For example, I just started talking to people like I would never, like random strangers, asking them lots of questions. Just I had so much curiosity. And that part of me, I really didn't even know existed in me while I stayed in Toronto. Like for 20 years. It never surfaced. Yeah. It required me to go outside of the so-called our box or my box in order to figure that out.
No, absolutely. And you can be the person who you are, and you can look I think for me initially it was the very initial steps was the appearance. It was like, I want to wear this t-shirt rather than this t-shirt, When I was growing up, people were very much into their sort of branding, sort of clothing as fashion, whereas I was just like a plain grey t-shirt kind of guy with some nice jeans and some nice boots, and I used to have earrings, but I was a little bit more alternative. So for me, when I left traveling, it was I could do that. I didn't feel like I was the outsider, although you go back and you feel like an outsider anyway for different reasons, but. Yeah, appearance-wise, and just being able to talk about different conversations and different interests, I think, as well. You're not seen as that's that guy and he likes that. But when you travel and meet people from other cultures, you can be a whole host of people. You can be a whole host of different, you can have a whole host of different interests.
So am I understanding your expectations of how you saw yourself before you left in terms of behaving a certain way changed when you went abroad?
Absolutely. Because I think, in a lot of part of England or the UK, certainly small towns or villages, there's a to be cool is to be tough, or the big party guy, the big drinker. That's a lot of the time the flex. And it's a hard thing to do if it's not it doesn't come natural to you. We all have certain sort of motivation That's a diplomatic way to do things. But yeah, I think that's what it is. And then when you get out of that, you can kind of just be around people who just don't have that either natural or sort of sought for anger to be the tough guy. You can just be around people who just want to be people. They just want to do this, and they have great, they're into exercising or hiking, or, the poetry, or they're a foodie, or they like to party. I mean, I'm not, I like to party. I have done for, but it's just where I was from, it was like one fits all. And I think traveling around Southeast Asia, which a 3-month trip turned into 9 or 10 months. And I went to Thailand, Laos, Vietnam, Cambodia, Myanmar, which had just opened at the time, which was an incredibly eye-opening experience. Indonesia, Philippines, all of these countries, you're meeting other travelers, you're meeting locals, and it was so eye-opening just to be around, again, go back to the point, like-minded people that you could be yourself around. No one was flexing. Everyone was just trying to experience something different and more visceral, and without societal expectation, and without anything to try and impress. It was just people just were in the moment, and we hear that a lot with iPhones and stuff now, and smartphones. But just people were in the moment and very present. And if you can find that at a time in anyone's life where you feel that you should be there and you're in the moment and you're just enjoying it and you're around people, that energy, it's euphoric, man. You know what I mean? And it really is. And that was the main reason why I kept going, because I had that feeling. I'll never be as happy as I was in that year, ever. I have already been resigned to that. And maybe I shouldn't do that, but I should be more open-minded and think, well, maybe I'll find, but that first year, I've never been as happy as I have in my life. Euphoric. I used to have dreams that I was going home, and it was a nightmare. Not dreams. I mean, I'd fall asleep and have nightmares that I was about to go home, and all of this was a mirage, and it hadn't happened.
Oh, wow.
And it happened a few times during that 9-10 month period before I moved to Australia, because I was so happy in my day life that my dreams were like the nightmares. It's crazy to think that, because most of the time we think, well, our day life's so, and our nighttime when we're dreaming, they're the ones that things become a little bit more alive. But it was the opposite. It was like, I don't want, so I was so happy, euphoric, really felt I needed to be there, meeting so many like-minded people, seeing new things. It was different. It was out of my comfort zone. I felt good, everything. It was great. And the best decision I've ever made in terms of my own sort of life, in terms of experiences. Incredible.
Tommy, when you look back, would your 25-year-old self be proud of the person you have become today and the lifestyle you have chosen for yourself?
Absolutely. No, I mean, really. I mean, he would be like, wow. I mean, there's a little bit of part of me, about 15%, that it's like, I always know that I was going to do this. But then the normalities of life, the other 85% get in the way, the worries, of everything, just the energy of life can get in the way of where you think you might go. But there's always a little bit of part of me that I thought, okay, I'd get to where I am. If I was 25 looking at myself now, I mean, honestly, I've probably forgotten more than what I've done certainly in social experiences. But in terms of, like, if I list down the major so-called achievements that I define as big points in my life, then that 25-year-old would be like, damn, like you're on the right path for sure.
And how many people can say that today, right? When they actually truly reflect that they are actually happy in their life right now. That's so great.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think traveling just really opened up the world to me, and the opportunity to be a better person and to be smarter and achieve and to give me opportunities. And these opportunities are still coming, and they're going to still come. But yeah, just getting out of the comfort zone, focusing on myself, focusing on things that I think are dear to me and true to me, and instinctively intertwine with how I feel and what I seek. Embed that with my curiosity. So there's all of that. If you can do that, and if you have the opportunity to do that, then it doesn't matter how old you are. I'd encourage anyone to do it, despite any circumstance. There's always ways to do things.
What kind of expectations do you hold of yourself today about how you want to continue to live your life?
You know what? It's an interesting time you're asking me this question, because this year I've started to work on television in the media. And I've done video before, I've been on screen, before and years ago. When I was younger, a big point was, if you're going to go into the media as a foreign correspondent, as that 7-year-old thought, TV is the thing that people will remember and that you will remember. I've been in the media for years, right? Writing, published, whether it's a travel writer or in the news. I've been to war zones. I've been to civil unrest, places with civil unrest. I've been to off the beaten track or less visited countries. I love all that and will continue to do that as long as I feel like I'm ready for it. But being in TV, although it's a little bit linear now because of social media and YouTube and all of these different channels, being on TV is a big milestone for me because it was something that I envisaged 30 years ago. And having been doing that this year, certainly, I mean, I was on the other day, and just that's my main work now, certainly in the media. I think it's a big milestone that I've reached. I'm a field correspondent. I like to be out and about. It's something I need to think about because I've got to the milestone which I wanted to. What do I want to do next? I had a meeting the other day at the British Embassy, and I spoke to some other journalists, and I was speaking to this Thai TV host, and she had her own TV show, and she was like, "Do you want to do that?" And it's not something I've ever thought about. And maybe these new dreams and expectations are going to start to build after this milestone. What can I do next with it? But in reality, I haven't thought about it too much in the media side. In terms of the living and lifestyle side, I still think I need to go to the Middle East. Like, it's a big part of me. It's a big part, and Africa, like that part of the world. I've spent a lot of time in South America, many years in Asia, Australia, New Zealand. But the Middle East and Africa is a bit of it's the missing link for me a little bit. I really feel I should have been there already. And it's something that's a big part of me that I need to conquer in whatever way I do it, whether it's a trip, backpacking trip, traveling trip, whether it's work, whether it's living there, all of that and above. I need to sort of do that. And then that's one big thing that I'm still sort of pursuing.
What about Antarctica?
Antarctica, yeah, sure. And I mean, it's something that's been on my list, but it's something that, again, the bigger picture, I always feel that I can do that a little bit when I'm older.
But you still hold these expectations of yourself to continue traveling and living the lifestyle you're living, and you'll kind of do it as it comes up. Yeah,
I guess so. But and it can be a little bit chaotic in way of thinking. But in terms of I'm very certain on a big picture. The last 5 years, I've certainly focused on building up in the media, and that's happened. And I've got to a stage now where I'm on TV and I do things, and it's cool. There are other projects that I'm doing on the side, online and things like that I'm working on as well this year. So I'm very aware of that. But once that all comes together, then I can start looking at other things I want to do, really big things in my life, and who's to say one day I don't travel to every country in the world? I mean, that's something I've thought about. I used to think of it as a bit more of a gimmick when I saw people doing it years ago. But now I'm thinking, well, actually, no, maybe I should do that to add to who I am and to sort of complement this journey that I've been on, and to add the icing on the cake, if you like, and if there is ever a definitive icing on the cake, but to complement it and to continue this experience and this inspiration to myself or to other people if they have any. So perhaps that, but yeah, there's other massive ambitions I want to do, and other projects I want to take on. Travel is very much center to that, and meeting new people and living different lives. And I still, and this is a good point I wanted to make, I still really think I'm young because I'm 38.
I love hearing that because there's so many people that I have met who think that they're old by the time they reach 40.
And this is the point as well I want to make. It's silly. When I was growing up, people were like, when you're 30, that's the sort of like the cutoff point for marriage and kids. And it's funny, but we didn't talk about it. But there was a point in my life when in my teenage years where I thought, okay, for me to be successful, by the time I'm 30, I have to have this, 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 and this.
Mm-hmm.
and this was probably a point when I was adolescent and I was sort of so involved in my own environment of my hometown. By 22 or 21, I'd had it all, right? I had a good job paying more than I expected for my age. Car, house, girlfriend. That was it, right? The basics, right? Great, wonderful life for most people. And I'm not discrediting it. But I had it at 21, 22. My father passed and I went, that kind of continued. But there was about a year or two in my life that I thought, if I can get that at 30, I'm successful, Obviously that changed. I got it way ahead of time. But in terms of age, people would think 30 is the cutoff point where you have to start settling down. It is in my hometown. I see people on my social media who I've went to school with, same age as me, 37, 38. And they're like, I'm having a midlife crisis. And I'm like, Christ almighty, stop saying that. Like, midlife what? But it's a symptom of where they are. Because around them, everyone's got family and people to take care of and jobs and that's fine. I think it's wonderful. It's cute, honestly. But if you were to sort of take a step aside, the potential of a 37, 38-year-old or someone in the 30s is massive. I think it's the beginning of the peak, the mind, certainly the mind of intelligence, of action, of experience, of you can do more things in your 30s and your 40s and your 50s. I really think 30s, 40s, 50s is a great time to do many great things, whether it's earn money or travel or experience-led, things. This sort of, silly, you're old when you're 30 or 35. It's ridiculous because what it is, people are comparing to the early years in the 20s. And it's a silly comparison because you're comparing to the social side of university or going out. And that's one small, minute comparison, right? It's not a comparison of life. It's a comparison to your social life. So if you're 35, if I'm 38 now and I go to my hometown and go to a nightclub, I'm going to look older, sure, because everyone else is 21, right? So I'm comparing that minute, small part of your life. But I think people do make that comparison because going out and socializing is the key 50% of their life, right? And that's fine. It used to be mine when I was younger. Going out, either it's eating, drinking, partying, certainly in England, is a main component of someone's social life, right? Going out, nightclub, pub, whatever. Of course, when you go to a different country and you can, there's more things you can embrace and do. You don't necessarily have to go out to find your sort of peace from work or whatever you're trying to seek. So when people compare, when they stop going out and they compare old ages, 30, 35, 40s, they're comparing it with a 21-year-old. That's not a comparison of life. You know what I mean? When in the media, when I'm around, at the Foreign Correspondents School of Thailand, and maybe they'll listen to this, so they might scold me afterwards, but I'm one of the youngest. And all these people are incredibly successful, certainly in the media, and I look up to some of them, and it's really, some of them are my mentors, but I'm so much younger than them, right? So anyone who's in the 30s who's listening to this, really, it's about where you are, it's your environment. My brother, he's early 30s, he's been saying that all of his mates are starting to settle down now and stuff like that, and he's still single, I believe, and he's starting to feel that pressure because everyone else is doing something that maybe he's not ready for, right? So I think in life that the key takeaway of this is that you've got to focus on yourself. There's a certain point in your life you've got to stop worrying about what other people do. Don't conform or don't have to copy or be a sheep to them. You have to focus on what you want to do because people will comment on what you do in your life either way. If you do this, if you go left, they'll comment on why you're going left. If you go right, they'll comment on why you're going right. And the sooner you can realize that, anyone can realize that, the more clarity you have in your own life to move forward because people will comment either way. It doesn't matter what you do. You've wasted too much time doing this. You're going there. It's too rash of a decision. So 30s is a great time to be who you are. And really, there's so much more to come.
So essentially you're saying set your own expectations?
Yeah, I guess so. In the simplest of way, perhaps, set your own expectations, but also expect them expectations to move and to change and to maybe 2 steps forward, 1 step back. That's sort of, sometimes things can there can be a bump in the road. So I've always been a bit of a limitless guy, most of the time, where I think I can do this if I want to go into this. I can do that if I want to do that. And I think it's a great way to live.
Tommy, talking about inspiration, if one was to ask you how they should live their life, and you've touched on this before, what would you say? Should they set their own expectations or follow those set by society?
Yeah, obviously set their own expectations. I still do think, though, we live in a society which is, seemingly more fractured nowadays, but certainly there's a structure there. You can use the structure, the system, the society's structure, you can use that to go into your own expectations. You can still use, I can't say I'm a minimalist guy where I'm not benefiting from society, right? I'm working in the media. I'm working for companies who pay me money, right? So I'm using that. And that's just an example. You can use society to sort of redirect where you want to go, take what you need, and then do your own thing. So absolutely, set your own expectations. Do not worry about what people think. I think that's the biggest thing that people have in their life, is that they're concerned about what other people think. I remember, and it was one of the greatest compliments my mother ever gave me, was there was a cartoon, and there was a queue of people waiting to go somewhere, and there was a man holding a balloon, said Tom on it, and basically he was traveling on this balloon with his finger up, his middle finger. I'm doing things my way, and all the people were queuing. And it was a great thing, it was basically to insinuate that this guy doesn't care. He's going to do it his way, or find a way to do this and to get to wherever they were going. And the rest of the people are queuing up. And it was a great compliment that still sticks in my mind today, because it was like, oh, wow, that was the first time I thought, wow, my mother actually has an idea of a little bit of who I am today, or where I've came. Not totally, of course, as we touched on earlier, but certainly that. So people will comment and judge you anyway. Doesn't matter what you do in life. They will say you're not doing enough. You're doing too little. You're doing too much. If it's something right, it's something you feel you need to do instinctively in your brain, in your gut. It's something that you can do. Then you should do it, because the old saying goes, not here for a long time, we're here for a good time, right? And you can live that to an extent, of course. Not everything's always rosy, but yeah, focus on yourself, do what you think's true to you, and you will see the possibilities and the opportunities that the world can provide. Life can provide so many opportunities. I went from a backpacker to someone who's been on TV, who's been in wars, right? I'm still on that same journey, technically. I haven't lived at home. I haven't went back to live. I've went back to visit, sure. So life, and that's an indication, maybe like a barometer of how life can change if you open yourself up to it. And I think the hardest thing for anyone listening or who wants inspiration to do something different with their life is just doing it, the initial stages. But you need that. You need the nerves. You need the anxiety, if you like, or to be unsure about what's going to happen next, because that means you're doing something different. Travel just brings out who you want to be and who you are and who you believe you are deep down inside of you, and again, what the opportunities can bring to you in life. And if you do it right for long enough and make a life out of it, I think the possibilities are endless.
I loved how Tommy said that anyone can embark on a travel journey regardless of their age. It's such a hopeful and encouraging message for anyone who wants to experience a different perspective on life. Tommy's story is a testament to the idea that following your heart can lead you down a path of unforeseen possibilities and even open up the gates to achieving your dreams. Of course, life never offers a perfectly smooth road. There will always be bumps along the way, moments that test your character and desires. Here are some questions worth asking. Is traveling or even living abroad meaningful to you? And what if such experiences revealed a part of yourself that has long remained hidden or undiscovered? would they then be worth pursuing? If you enjoyed this episode, please follow us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts to catch future episodes as they drop. You can also find us on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. And remember to like and subscribe to the X Perspective podcast on your platform of choice. As we continue to grow the TXP podcast community, I'd love for you to invite your friends and family to listen. Let's spread the word together. My listeners, thank you for your time and attention. But before you go, I have one last question. Have you visited our website yet? You'll find us at theexperspectivepodcast.com. It was built specifically for us by an awesome company called Stegadon Software. They help small businesses level up with sleek modern websites and custom apps without any tech headaches. They got our website up and running in no time and were very attentive to all our needs and concerns. If you're curious about what they can do for you, mention the X Perspective podcast and you'll get a free consultation. Check them out at stegadonsoftware.com. That's STEGODON software.com. Stegadon Software. Smart software, fewer obstacles. Thank you for listening. See you in episode 18.